an update today on Tessie. For those of you who are new here, Tessie is our 2-year-old who is on the autism spectrum. She is actually getting close to being 3. She's going to be 3 at the end of June. I'm really excited about making tonight's video because I have news, and the news is actually really good. You'll have to bear with me. I'm feeling a lot better, but my voice is still not back to normal. It sounds like this, obviously, but it doesn't hurt to talk or anything, so I am going to share this news because I can't wait, and I don't know how long it's going to be before my voice is actually back to normal. So I'll start with the easiest one to explain first, I guess. When Tessie was a baby, everyone was kind of trying to figure out what was going on with her. After she was 6 months old, when she fell asleep during a neurology exam and wouldn't really wake up, and she had her sleep study, we knew that she had central apnea, and at that point she also had problems with hypoventilation, and so at that point we knew that was going on. Everyone was trying to figure out why this was happening, because central apnea is when your brain tells you not to breathe, so it's not like obstructive apnea where it's like your adenoids or your tonsils or something like that is keeping you from breathing. Her brain just wasn't telling her to breathe. So when you have a central apnea, I guess the way it's been explained to me is the way that the sleep study differentiates a central apnea from an obstructive apnea is that there's no effort made to breathe by the body, and that's how they tell that it's a central apnea instead of an obstructive apnea where someone's trying to breathe and they can't. She was diagnosed at 6 months with central apnea, which was almost 2.5 years ago now, and they ran just about every test that her doctors could think of trying to figure out what it was that was causing her central apnea. Her neurologist felt like it was genetic, and the geneticist felt like it was neurological. So there was a lot of back and forth between them. Ultimately, in the initial workups, the only test that came back abnormal was when they did the organic acid test, which is a urine test. It came back and it showed that she had elevated ammonia levels, and they weren't like crazy high ammonia levels, they were just somewhat elevated. Then the lab, Mayo Clinic, is where that is sent to be done. They're the lab that tests for that. And so they would send back and say that they wanted these further tests done to test for a metabolic condition. And so they would do those tests, and then lactate would come back and it would be slightly elevated. And throughout her entire life, that has always also been elevated between 2 and 4. But that's a really delicate test, so for a very long time it was just said like it probably wasn't drawn properly, even when the doctor would stand right there and like watch it be drawn. Everyone always kind of wondered whether it was just because if she was too upset, which I mean a baby's gonna be upset when they're having a blood test, that could affect the outcome of the test. But there were times when people said that they thought they got a good draw and then it was still abnormal. Those two were the ones that always came back abnormally, and lactate has never been normal. She just had it again at the hospital and it was 4 and 2. So that isn't good news yet. However, we just, because of the lactate test being abnormal at the hospital, they just reordered the ammonia again for the first time in over a year. And the ammonia, which had been redone and was abnormal again in the past, this time when they did it, I was mentally preparing myself because it had never been normal. And I didn't expect it to be normal because of all those tests that she had before. And then I got a call from neurology, and the nurse said, "We got your daughter's test results." And in my head I was like, "And they are abnormal." And she said, "And they're normal." And I like getting teary. I was so happy. I was, tell him thank you, tell him thank you. This is the first time. This is because I was totally like elated. So I explained, I said, this is the first time that's ever happened. She's had this test done and done. It's never been normal. Tell him thank you. So it's normal. That is normal. So that is something that has finally, we don't know why it was ever abnormal, but for the very first time ever. And I mean, it was normal while she was kind of sick and kind of yuck and not totally herself and fatigued and tired that week. So I felt like if it was gonna be bad, that was a time when it was gonna be bad, and it wasn't bad. It was good. It was back. It was for the first time ever in the normal range. So that totally made my week. Now, the other really big thing that totally made my week was this. Does this look like it should be $10,000? we went to Tessie's pulmonology appointment, and usually when we go to a pulmonology appointment, they schedule another sleep study. And this time they didn't. In fact, the only thing that they done was a few weeks earlier, they just had her wear one of those little things on her toe, and the little thing on her toe said that she had DSATs. I already said this once, but if you're interested, her average for the night was 91, DSATs 5% of the night to 87, and a low of 49 for oxygen levels, and they were hoping that the 49 was a mistake. They bumped up her oxygen because of that, but it's not like we can keep a nasal cannula on her anyways because she rips it off all night long. But back to this thing. We have now had this for 25 months. And the reason that she has to keep having these sleep studies that are horrible and awful and terrible, I mean, she's had them since she was 6 months old. She's had, I think, at least 10, around 10, somewhere in that ballpark. She really, really hates them, is because every 4 to 6 months she has to requalify to keep the insurance paying for this thing. And so they would just requalify her over and over and over and over again. In the beginning, I didn't realize that I could push it back to the end of the 6 months. So in the beginning, they always tried to schedule us for 4 months. And so I would just take the appointment that they offered me. By the end, I learned to stretch it out and be like, I want the last appointment date you could possibly give me, because otherwise that's like an entire extra sleep study that she's having each year. Nobody wants that. Well, at least I don't. Then Paul mentions to me, Paul is the one who usually takes this thing in. He's the one who picks up straps for it. He's the one, because his work is nearer to the medical equipment place, and he doesn't usually have kids with him. So it's really easy for him to just run in with it and run out and get everything done. Right as we're going into the doctor's appointment, he says to me, oh yeah, by the way, the last time I was there, they mentioned we own it now. And I was like, no, seriously. I was told that we would never ever own it. When we almost lost this thing a little bit over a year ago, because she had one good sleep study in the midst of many, many, many very bad sleep studies. She had one good night, and they tried to take it away from us. And I was like not answering my door because she had previously stopped breathing, and we had a hard time getting her breathing again, and there was no way I was going to let someone take this thing from me. They could pry it out of my cold, dead hands, because I was terrified at that point of what would happen if they did take it. And so we were calling her doctor's office and begging them, what could we do? Could they, like, anything, what could we do? At that point, I went into the medical supply company without it, and I explained the situation to them because the pulmonologist had recalled the prescription, so they had to come get it. And I explained what was going on, and they were very, very sorry. I said, so I know we've had this for a year and the insurance has been paying for it, and I know with like CPAPs and stuff, once the insurance pays the full amount of it, you own it. So at what point will we own this machine? And they said to me, you'll never own it because you're paying for a service. You're not paying, which is the download. You're not paying for that machine to be used. So you're never ever gonna own it. And I said, how much would it be for me to buy this thing? And they said $10,000 plus then $400 a month for the downloads and stuff, which honestly we don't even need. All we need is this to be the alarm that wakes her up to get her to breathe again when she stops breathing. But that was completely and utterly out of the question. I was under the impression from that point on that we would never ever own it. And then all of a sudden I got a phone call from them saying I needed to bring it in earlier this month because they needed to do a download. The insurance was requesting the download, so I did bring it in. And that is when they told Paul that we own it now. And in my head I was like, 25 months. That exactly adds up to $10,000 of fees at that price. It's ours. I hope that's right. But I think that since it matched up, and I think also since the doctor's office didn't require her to have another sleep study, I think that means that it actually is right. So I'm really, really excited about that too, because that means nobody can take her apnea monitor away from her. And her pediatrician wrote a prescription note that I took in today, and they lowered the heart rate because it was still on baby heart rate, and the alarm was going off all night long because her heart rate now goes under 68 and the minimum was 68, which is good for a baby because babies shouldn't have a heart rate that's slow. But as a toddler, her heart rate is slower now. So they fixed it. It's set up for an older kid. I am much less stressed. However, I still got a call today. So what ultimately happened, backing up, because pulmonology called in the prescription. What ultimately happened, if you haven't watched the central apnea videos that I did a way long time ago, what ultimately happened was we took her to her pediatrician. I was basically hysterical about it, and he called the pulmonologist and he asked the pulmonologist to reconsider, and the pulmonologist said it's a like 0.0001% chance if she has a good sleep study, that there's anything going on. And so they did a second sleep study, and during that second sleep study she was hypoxic all night long, and they told me on the phone that they were really glad that I fought so hard for her and that it could have turned out very badly. Then within 4 months, again, they were questioning whether or not she would need it because she was getting so old, and most babies her age have outgrown it by that age, because when it's a premature baby they usually outgrow it. But Tessie wasn't premature. No one knows why she stops breathing. A lot of her doctors think that it's because of her chromosomal abnormality, and so I am extremely grateful that this monitor, according to the medical supply company, apparently is ours now. I feel like we should have some sort of a party to celebrate it, because that was really stressful 2 years where for almost all of the 2 years I was sick to my stomach about whether or not we were gonna lose this thing. There's been so many videos where I was like so stressed out about it. It was definitely one of the #1 worries in my life for the last 2 years. In kind of good news, kind of mixed news, I'm tacking this on to the end. She saw her gastroenterologist yesterday and she's growing well, she's healthy. It does look like it's dairy. She can have baked dairy or dairy that's been heated to a high temperature. She just can't have dairy that hasn't been. So like any cheese or yogurt or milk or ice cream. Poor Tess. He did mention that he was concerned about the possibility of something. The acronym was FRIES. I don't know. So that is kind of where we are with that. It's an acronym. I should look. Oh, okay, I misspelled it. The thing he was concerned about is food protein induced enterocolitis syndrome. Food protein induced enterocolitis syndrome. He's not saying she has that. He's just concerned about the possibility of it. But she doesn't throw up a ton. She did throw up today. Okay, so my brain has just been reading it wrong, and it's actually FPIES, not fries. I just have been seeing a word that looks like fries, and apparently my brain just FPIES. Anyways, if you're interested in what that is, you can Google it. Maybe don't Google it though, and that's a nothing for sure. That's just kind of like a concern. But she's doing super well off of dairy, so that's a really good thing. That is the update. If you like this video, we would love it if you'd give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in all things autism, we'd love it if you'd hit subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.